Okay, guys, it's time to get started today. I'd like to introduce our speaker. His name is Sascha Hoffmann, and we all know his dad, Jorge, pretty doggone good. He's a regular, been a regular for as long as I can remember. And Sascha is going to give a personal testimony today, which is always a fascinating thing. And he's a man after my own heart. He likes to surf and fish and stay on the water a lot. He has his own business, you know, so welcome, Sascha.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to set my timer up so I don't keep you here till dinner. But I'm very grateful and thankful for the opportunity to be here and share with you guys. So, as I said, I'm Sascha Hoffmann, Jorge's son, and I'm really just excited that you guys are here. He told me about this months ago that he was attending regularly, and so I'm always encouraged because as iron sharpens iron, man sharpens man, and you know, as the church and the body of Christ, we get together and we share each other's struggles and victories, and we get stronger, and it empowers us to go out in the world and love each other. So I'll get right into it. You know, when I was young, I had a really good life. You know, I was raised by my mother and father, and they loved me to no end. You know, I know a lot of people have stories where their parents didn't treat them well and they had a hard upbringing and all that stuff. You know, that's not my story. I was the typical wonderful parents, wonderful life, rotten child. You know, and I put on a good show to my teachers and to my parents for a long time, but you know, I started pretty young, being rebellious in my own ways, you know, smoking some pot and drinking here and there. From 12 or 13, I had a couple of friends whose parents let us do whatever we wanted. So on the weekends, I'd go play, and then during the week, I'd be a good boy and get good grades. But eventually, it started to catch up to me. You know, really about the time I graduated high school, that's when life kind of hit me. Once you stop going to school every day, you know, I realized, okay, well, I've got to go to work now and I've got to make a living. It's either go to school or make a bunch of money, or, you know, one or the other. And I got kind of lost in that space of not knowing what I wanted to do and not having a job that I really wanted to go after, anything like that. So, and I had begun, you know, I partied, you know, I definitely partied more than I should have. But it was always sort of harmless in the sense that I could still function, I could still go to my job. I didn't have any major problems. Well, about a year after I graduated, or maybe even less, I was hanging out with a friend, you know, and up until that point, I had done, you know, a lot of drinking and a lot of smoking and a lot of even cocaine here and there, but I had basically kept it together. Well, I had a friend who introduced me to these pills that he was selling, because I was selling weed at the time as a young entrepreneur. You know, I was buying bricks of terrible quality weed, and I was selling it to my friends, and you know, just enough to pay the gas and things like that. Well, my buddy always seemed to have a little more money, and I asked him what he was doing, and he had these pills called Oxycontin that I've never heard of. I'm sure you guys know about it or have heard about it, or use them responsibly when you need them, you know, toothache, stuff like that. Well, I didn't know anything about them. I was as naive as it could be. I was like a 5-year-old in a strip club. I had no idea what was going on. But I knew that he was making some good money. And so I said, well, you know, how do you get these? What do you do? And so basically explained to me, I had a friend that got them, and you know, this is back in 2007 maybe, 2006. So back then, you know, and we're obviously in an opioid pandemic, so to speak, right now. But back then it was a little bit different. You know, this is 14, 15 years ago now. And they were a lot easier to get. Now it's much more difficult. Well, you know, and I guess that was bad for me. You know, I didn't realize it, but I took my $400 paycheck that I got that week, and I said, give me $400 worth of those little yellow things, and I'll see if I can make some money too. You know, I didn't think, I had no interest in consuming them myself or having anything to do with it. I simply was just looking for a way to make money. And I knew the importance of having money. You know, it's like you have to have money, but I didn't really have any other goals. So I was really just trying to occupy my time. Well, I turned that $400 into $800 like in one day. I got a few numbers from a few people that were, what I didn't even know was possible at the time. They were addicted to these pills. I didn't know that. I was completely naive that was even possible. And so I took my $400, turned it into $800 real quick. And I said, man, these people are really want these pills. And so I went back to my buddy and gave him $800 and said, here, give me $800 worth of those. And so he brought me back in. Again, I had $1,600, and I was doubling my money almost daily. The only thing I had to wait for was him to drive and get it and bring it back, and sometimes that was a day or two. And so, and all the while living at home with my parents and just stacking money under my mattress. And from the outside, you wouldn't know. Well, my parents had no clue. I was doing it discreetly as I could. It wasn't with anybody that they'd known or anything like that. So I was able to build this in the darkness, I guess you would say. And before long, I had like $40,000 or $50,000 in cash, very dirty money, but it was cash under my mattress. And I'm like, man, I might actually be able to get a really nice car. I might be able to buy a house. Like, I was thinking retirement, you know. I was like, at this rate, I'm like 23, 24, or well, at this time I was 18, but I was thinking I'll be 24, 25 at this rate, and I'll be retired, you know. I mean, I didn't think about how you would get the cash into real things. You know, I was just totally, you know, flying by the wings, so to speak, not really thinking. But I was caught up in the money. I mean, you know, my parents, believe it or not, were broke when I grew up. You know, basically paycheck to paycheck type of living. You know, we didn't have excess. There wasn't no shopping sprees. They took care of me, and I was, you know, I always had food to eat and things like that. But it wasn't anything where we'd go spend a lot of money. You know what I mean? And my dad's always been a hard worker. He worked at Scotty's and Lowe's and all that, and now he's at Edward Jones, and that's obviously awesome. But, you know, back then it was, he told me, he communicated very well with me from a young age, from the time I was 13, if you want a car, you're going to have to work for it and save X amount of money. If you wanted this, you know, you got to pay your way. You know, he taught me how to be responsible. And so I was mixed in this world of taking care of my responsibilities while also being a complete fool and making this money in the wrong way. Well, all was good and well in my mind. I thought, you know, I'm going to retire in 3 or 4 years from this, and it'll be all good. And then one day I had a friend who, because I never actually took any pills. I never took an Oxycontin in my life. And this is, you know, I'd been messing with them for 4 or 5 months now, handling them, and I'd never even had one. You know, I liked smoking and I liked drinking, but I didn't really have any interest in anything else. And so, but a friend of mine bought some pills from me, and these were 80 milligram Oxycontins at this time, which I don't think they make anymore. He bought one from me and then shared it with me, like a good friend would, you know. And he said, Eric, you know, he says, I know you won't, because I was very money minded. And so I said, I'm not going to do, if this is money, I'm not going to do it. So he bought it and gave it back to me, and we shared it. And I'd never had any experience with it, and he broke it up with a hose clamp and shaved it up in this weird way, did all these crazy things, and I snorted half of it, and he snorted half of it, and I woke up, I mean, I don't know how to say this right. It felt great, unfortunately. It felt great. The feeling that it gave my body was better than any weed, and it was better than any alcohol, and it was instant. You know, and I woke up in the morning going, oh my gosh, what happened last night? And he said, man, we had a great time. And I was like, whoa, you know, so I went to work the next day, didn't think anything about it. Well, he did the same thing the next night. He's like, hey, come back over, let's do that again. I said, sure, why not? I mean, it felt great. I have thousands of them at this time. And so I went back and tried it again. And before long, I realized, well, I guess, you know, I have a lot of these pills. You know, I was one of the rare drug dealers that had a lot of product and didn't use it. So I had, but I had as much as I could want, or a group of people could want. I had tons and tons. And so I started doing them here and there. You know, I'd go to a party, hang out with some friends, and then I would, you know, snort a pill there and then here and there. And, you know, before long, I remember I was doing my weekly accounting of how much money I should have had at the end of the week. And I was supposed to have $8,000 that week based off what I'd sold. And at this time, I was really deep into it. I had multiple friends that were selling pills for me, so I was like the ringleader. And I would get them from Boynton Beach. There was like this Russian mafia guy down there, and they were getting pills off the pallets. They were getting pallets off the truck somehow for these pills. And I was getting bottles that they were filling them at the pharmacy with. I was getting those bottles, you know, 1,080 milligram oxys. You know, I mean, that could kill a whole school of people, you know, I mean, ridiculous amounts. And so when I did my math at the end of the week, I should have had $4,000, or I should have had $8,000, I had $4,000. And I'm like, where did this $4,000 go? I called my buddies accusing them, like, hey, you must not have gave me enough money, this and this and that. And then one of my buddies brought it to my attention. He says, you've been doing a lot of pills, man. You've been kind of partying pretty hard. He's like, are you sure you're not? And so I kind of went back and I thought, no, there's no way. And so, but I thought, just to find out I'm not going to do these pills. I'm not going to do them anymore. I'm just going to drink and smoke and carry on, whatever. Well, that evening I got sick as a dog, like really, really sick. I thought it was a flu or something like that. And I was just, vomiting and both ends, the whole deal, just having what I didn't know at the time was extreme withdrawals, like serious withdrawals, and I didn't even know it was possible. I didn't know you could withdraw from something. That's how naive I was. And so I was, all of a sudden, my buddy told me, I told him what was going on, and he said, well, you're probably just addicted and withdrawing. And I cussed him up and down. I said, no way, man, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just, F you. I said it, I just went off on him. And so, but in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I'm really sick, I'm feeling really terrible. Maybe I'll just snort a pill and I'll feel better, right? Then at least I'll get through this sickness that I have, this cold, this flu. And so I snorted a little tiny bit, just a little, like a quarter of a pill, something that I wouldn't even feel, typically. And I passed out right there on the toilet, like boom, hit the ground, and woke up a few minutes later, but the pain just melted off when I snorted it. And that's when I realized that I was addicted. And so it was very, I don't want to say humbling moment, but it was a reality check that, okay, I'm physically dependent on this if I don't have it. And I didn't realize, because I had so many people selling for me and things like that, I didn't even realize how many I was personally doing. And I went back and did the math, and I was doing almost 1,000 milligrams a day. I was snorting 380s in the morning, 3 in the middle of the day, and 3 in the afternoon, and lots of 30s in between. So, that would kill most people. If you snorted an 80 milligram pill and you're not used to those type of pills, it would kill you. I didn't realize that because I had big bottles of these, and I was doing it at whatever rate. Someone who's addicted and has 3 pills to their name, they've got it, measured out. I didn't know. I was in this excess, and so that was where I came to a point where I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And the reality was I didn't want to stop making money. And I thought in my head that, I'll just kick this habit slowly over time. I'll just wean myself off and get better. And that didn't happen. I internally realized that there's nothing I can do to not do these. I'm stuck here. So I had to sell more and more and more to feed my habit, which was more and more and more. And it didn't take long. This all happened fairly fast because I got into it very quickly by not using in the beginning. I met a lot of people, because in the drug world, most people never get to that kingpin status because they end up, doing what I did earlier on. So I ended up with a lot of connections, a lot of people, and it was just this perfect trap which enabled me to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. It was like I was stuck in my own success. And so my father and mother noticed, because I was falling asleep in my cereal bowl in the morning and things like that. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody who's nodding out from having taken too much of a medicine or anything like that, but they were aware that it wasn't pot. They were aware it wasn't a beer I had the night before. They knew it was something else, and so they started drug testing me, the 12 panel, and I'd fail for everything on it. I don't know, pretty much everything. I remember, because I was taking everything at this point. Once I lost control and I realized that I had no control, I kind of just let it go to the wind. I shot meth, I smoked crack, I did every single drug that ever came across me. I took pills that I didn't even know what they were. I would just literally had lost all self-control. And my mother and father cared about me, and my mom would be up all night knowing that I was on the edge of living and dying every day, and she would stay up all night, and so I know I strained their relationship heavily. I can only imagine. But eventually my dad in loving fashion said, look, we're drugged, because he would give me the drug test and I'd say, okay, I'll stop. And then I would just continue to fail across the board just over and over until he said, you either stop or you leave. And that was out of love. When I look back, it was a loving thing. You can't kill yourself in my house was the basic message, right? You can't do that here. And I was tearing the family apart. I have a younger brother and all that stuff. So I packed my bags. I took a couple of black trash bags, threw all my clothes in it, and started living in my truck. And eventually some friends let me start staying on their couches, and that's all I did was couch surf for several months. And then my mother and father loved me so much they didn't like me being out there, and they offered, I was a habitual liar by this point, The truth didn't even matter. It wasn't even a real thing to me. It was just all lies, whatever it was, to get by to the next day. You guys maybe have known somebody like that who will just lie out their teeth just to get by, and that's how I was. So I told my family I had kicked my habits and yada yada, and so my dad let me rent the house that I'd grown up in from them, and really all it was just a place for me to lay my head. And so I just continued to get worse still, despite that. And they were trying to help me, but there was no helping me at that point. And so I was a bar back at that time. I got fired from all my other jobs for being high on the job. So I ended up being a bar back, just filling ice and stuff like that, just enough to basically hold a job so the police would leave me alone and not think that my money was coming from somewhere else. Because if you have a bunch of money and no job, eventually you get in trouble. And I was depositing thousands of dollars at the bank in cash and small bills, and eventually they were like questioning me about that because you're not making 10 grand a week with a lawn business in ones and fives. You know what I mean? It was pretty obvious to everybody. I was the only one who apparently didn't see what was going on. So I was stuck. I was at the point where I was overdosing on a regular basis, but just not going to the hospital for it. It was constant. I wake up in my vehicle. I drove off I-95 asleep. I fell asleep at the wheel and woke up with my vehicle in the woods. Don't know how fast I was when I went in the woods, but I remember my mirrors being turned in, having hit trees on the way into the woods at 60 or 70 miles an hour. So, and I could tell you stories like that until I'm blue in the face. I'm not going to, but just completely lost and completely consumed with no real hope of getting out. I just assumed that was my new life, and this is how it is. The decision I made have got me here, and so and when you're doing that many drugs, you're not thinking anyways. So I was at work, and I was doing so much that I would withdraw within about 5 or 6 hours. So even a shift at work, I would be getting sick before I would even finish my short shift in the afternoon. I would already be sick, dope sick, before I would even go home. So I would have my drugs, my 380 milligram oxys would be broken out on the bathroom before I would leave for work, so that when I got home I could snort them right away, because I'd be in a lot of pain. And I'll never forget the date. It was February 17th, 2008. I came home, went to my bathroom, and it's funny, it's ironic, or not ironic, but in this room, the only thing I had was a mattress. No sheet on it, no nothing. That's the only possession I had, was the mattress and some clothes in the closet that were still in the bags that I left with. I mean, I hadn't, I wore board shorts and, hopped in the ocean once in a while. Like, I was literally just a mess. And, but I came home on February 17th, and I remember going into my bathroom and flipping the light on, and in the mirror, seeing a complete stranger. Someone I didn't even recognize. And it terrified me. I mean, I instantly dove out of the bathroom, rolled to the closet, grabbed my guns, and started pointing back towards the bathroom like, there's a stranger, there's some dope fiend in my bathroom right now. And I literally thought there was. And eventually, I cleared the bathroom a couple different times and said, and I was a little scared to go back to the mirror. And I finally peeked my head in there and looked in the mirror. And as if my eyes had kind of been opened, I saw myself for what I actually was. I could actually see myself. In my mind, I had long blonde hair, and I was in shape, and I was a surfer. But in reality, I looked like a sick person, pale, skinny, bloated stomach, just weird looking. Not in good health, and it literally terrified me. I mean, I wanted to fight this stranger, but in reality, it was just me. And I mean, it floored me. I thought, oh my goodness, I look like I am one day from death. And I'd never seen that before. I looked in that mirror every day. And so I did right then, I literally took those drugs and just wiped them off the counter into the toilet. And an addict doesn't do that. There was a significant change right there where I said, right there in that moment, I said, I'm either going to die or get out of this, but I'm not going to live like this anymore. And so there was this awakening inside of me that or at least just a moment of sanity where I realized, okay, You know, one clear moment. I'm done with this. I'm absolutely done. And I knew the amount that I was addicted to, I knew I couldn't go cold turkey, so to speak. You can't just quit when you're addicted to that high an amount of an opioid. You can't just stop. You have to go to the hospital. They need to put you on IVs. They need to give you all these medicines. No, I went cold turkey. I said, that's it. I'm done. I said, I'll die right here in this room. I don't care. My parents will be happier, or not happier, but they won't have to worry about me. You know, you think all these crazy things when you're absorbed by evil, when you don't even know evil exists. It's like fighting a ghost that's not there. So I laid down and started going through the withdrawals, and all night long until I was empty. You know, I wouldn't even get up to go to the toilet anymore because I knew it was just dry heaving and nothing would come out. But you know, it's the worst pain. I've never broken like my femur, but I would say it's the worst pain you could ever have because everything hurts when you're going through these withdrawals, and that's why people get so stuck in it, because it's every single cell in your body is rejecting itself. It's just in pure chaos. I mean, your bones hurt. You can't even blink your eyes without feeling like your skull is cracking. You know, the amount of pain you won't, if there's any way to get out of that pain, you will, and that's why people get so stuck in it, because you won't ever go through that pain willingly. But I went cold turkey right there on that night, and the whole next day, I literally called all my friends and told them I'm done. You know, all the people that I dealt with, and that was even dangerous at the time because I had a lot of money involved and other people's money involved and things like that. And I said, I don't care. Come kill me. Do what you want. Call your boys. It doesn't matter. I'm out of it. And they told me even on the phone, they said, you're going to die if you if you just go cold turkey. You need to at least go to a program or something. And I was stubborn, always have been. So I just laid there. And I hadn't spoke with my father or often, you know. He would check in on me and I would lie, and that was the premise of how our relationship was. And I had laid in that bed from that night until the next afternoon, knowing that I wasn't going to make it. And so I was dealing with that, but you know, I was in so much pain I didn't think clearly. Well, my dad called me randomly, and I answered the phone, and it was the first time that my voice had sounded normal in a long time. Because you can hear, you can hear in the voice that the person's extremely intoxicated on something. And so my dad always knew, you know, and he wouldn't call me out because he's just loving and wanted me to talk to him and things like that. But he always knew that I was messed up. Well, this was the first time that my voice had sounded normal in a couple years. So I answered the phone. I was like, well, I can definitely lie to him now because my voice is normal, you know. So I answered the phone. He said, hey, what's going on? And you know, you could tell he was shocked that I answered the phone. What are you doing tonight? And I was, I don't know, I'm dying, you know. And he said, well, you want to come over for dinner? And I didn't know how to explain anything, and it was all in the moment. I said, sure. And then he's like, all right, and got off the phone real quick before I could change my mind or make up any excuse, as I always would. And so I went home, or hung up the phone. I said, well, I guess we'll go over there. In my head, I thought, well, if I survive, I'll go over there, and then I'll convince them that everything's fine, and then I'll go home and see if I make it. You know, I didn't know what was going to happen, but so I showed up that afternoon. I don't remember exactly what time it was, you know, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And I remember my dad running down the driveway to meet me, and I parked at the end of the driveway. I didn't even pull up because I didn't want anyone to see me, really. I was hoping I could just make an appearance and then say, hey, I'm not hungry, and then leave, and then kind of get them off my back for a little while. But when my dad come running down the driveway and he saw me, he said, you know, obviously he was heartbroken, but he said, you know, you need to go around, go to the garage. We need to talk. Your mom can't see you like how you're looking right now. And because I looked probably like a zombie, like a dead person walking. I know I was in really, really bad shape. So I go into the garage, and he meets me in there, and he says, what are you doing? You're obviously using drugs. When are you going to stop? Are you going to stop? You know, and I know he didn't mean any harm by it, but all of a sudden, this rage came up inside of me that was unjustified, but in my mind I'm thinking, you know, I have all these different voices in my head saying, well, you already quit yesterday, and who is he to say that? And he doesn't care about you. And I had this rage come up inside of me. I got so mad. I started screaming and yelling, and I don't remember what I said after the fact, but I was so angry I could kill someone. You know what I mean? That's how angry I was. It was just the deepest rage I had ever felt. And I thought to myself, no, that's it. There's no way. Like, I had hit my breaking point. And I decided in that moment that I was going to kill myself, and I took off running. I ran out the garage, and I was going to head to my truck because I had enough pills at the house that I could eat a couple hundred. I mean, it would kill a dozen horses. I mean, I had plenty if I didn't use a gun. I mean, I was dead set. There was nothing I wanted anything more in the world after that simple question than to just kill myself and end it. You know, I was done. Life was worthless. And all these lies were coming to my mind that, you know, lies and truth to me were intermingled, and, you know, your family will be happier. You'll be free of pain. You know, there was all these wonderful blessings that would come of my death in my mind, all in just in this moment. So I took off running, and when I got to the corner of the house, it was as if I had hit a wall. There was no wall there. It was just coming around the garage. But I got stood up like I had met a linebacker there. And it was as if my soul had left my body. I lost all motor function. I was standing there, and my eyes were open and my ears were open, but I couldn't look left or right. I couldn't even move any part of my body. I was standing there like a body without a soul. And I didn't even believe in souls or God or any of that stuff. You know, I wasn't a person of faith. I wasn't, if anything, I was the opposite. And so as I'm sitting there, though, I could still hear. And I hear my mother come into the garage and start screaming at my father, "You made him run away. He finally came over, yada, yada, yada." And so there's just this turmoil, this hurricane in my head of all this chaos that I have caused. But I can't even think straight. I can't even get words out. I literally, it's hard to explain, but it was like my body was separated from my mind. And finally, and it was really quiet outside. It was an eerily quiet night. Just, you know, like it was perfect. I hear this, I see it like a sentence written on a page. "You can fix this, period." And it was the only thought I had in my head at the moment. And it was very simple. And I started thinking, and I thought, as I stand here outside this garage, well, I guess if I stop doing drugs, and maybe this will go away. Maybe I can fix all this. So I turned to walk into the house, and I fell like I had never taken a step in my life. I lost my balance and caught myself on the house. And my feet just weren't working. I mean, and I've fallen asleep on my neck funny, but this wasn't that. This was, it felt like learning to walk again. So I had to walk myself along the wall, because in my mind I was like, I'll just go inside and say sorry, you know. So I walked up, and as I'm touching the wall and as I'm touching the door handle, I'm looking at the door handle, all of a sudden I was amazed, like a child that sees a bass for the first time or something. You're just totally enamored by it. I was looking at this handle on this door like, wow, this thing is beautifully created. How did somebody make this? It's just intricate and how it works. And I was like, I'd never seen a door handle in my life. Like I'd never seen anything really. Like I was seeing things for the first time. And so I'm having this interesting moment of like, you know, this interesting experience, but then I can still hear my mom yelling in the garage. So I open the door and I step in, and my mom sees me, and I looked sunk in. I lost I put it somewhere special, my ID from that time, and, you know, it doesn't even look like me, you know, black raccoon eyes and just, you know, what a drug addict looks like. And my mom saw me, and she put her hand over her mouth because she didn't want to throw up, and ran inside. And my dad said, you know, he didn't have me, and I didn't know what to say. I was in a state of not knowing really anything and nothing in my head. And so I said, "I'm sorry." And that was the first time I'd ever given a genuine apology in my life. And all of a sudden, when I said I was sorry, all of the guilt that I had never felt, that I should have felt, hit me all at the same time. The guilt of what I did to my parents, the guilt of giving my younger brother that example, the families that I had personally ruined by selling them drugs, families I'd watched just crumble, foreclosure, the whole nine. I cared nothing. I was gutless when it came to that. I cared nothing about anyone. And for the first time in my life, I felt all the guilt from my whole life. And it was just waves. It was like being in the ocean tied to an anchor, just the waves crashing on you. The guilt was so heavy that it just crushed me. I mean, I crumpled, and I just started bawling my eyes out. Just the weight of this guilt was so strong, I thought it would never leave. And my dad came over to give me a hug. And, you know, he was crying as well, obviously, at this point, and I'm sure he had no clue what was going on, and neither did I. So he gave me a hug, and as soon as he gave me a hug, all of a sudden I felt this rage again. But this time it wasn't at him or at anybody else. It was at the devil that I had never known was real. Like, I felt the evil in the room. But it was the first time that it wasn't in me. It was beside me. It was It was something that I could face, that didn't have control over me. And I cussed the devil up and down, growling and spitting and just this rage. And I don't want to cuss, but I said, devil, you have no power over me anymore. And then it was gone. And my dad and my mom were very emotionally worked up because this was a very kind of chaotic evening at this point. And he said, you can stay, you can go, do what you want. He's like, I got to go inside. So he went inside, and I walked inside like a little child who'd never been in a house before, started eating things out of the fridge as if I'd never eaten before, which is true. I mean, I drank almost a whole gallon of milk, ate a huge lasagna, which I was supposed to be there for dinner and whatnot, and I went and laid down. And I never slept regularly because I was always so high on these drugs that you're always in a state of sleep almost. You're never really awake. And so I never had a good night's sleep. So I laid down in this bed, and before you know it, it's morning. And I remember looking at the clock and going, uh-oh, this is day 2 of withdrawals, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. This day is going to be worse than the first day. Withdrawals get worse. The first day's bad, second day's worse, third day's even worse, and if you survive those days, you might make it if you have water to drink. I couldn't even drink water. I mean, I couldn't drink anything the night before. It was so withdrawing. And so I remember all of a sudden this fear hitting me. As soon as I realized it was morning, I knew that it's impossible for me to, A, have slept through the night, and B, to still be alive. And so I started just shaking. Like I had this outrageous fear, and I just started trembling. Like I could hear the bed, that's my time. I could hear the bed even the bed legs were shaking. I was so scared laying in the bed. And so, but what choice do I have? I'm here, I'm in this bed, I've got to move at some point, because I knew as soon as I moved, I'd feel that pain. And as soon as I felt the pain, I was going to die. And I felt that evil like I'd felt the night before, as if it was ready to take me to hell, where I really, truly felt I deserved to go. And that was the truest, the biggest source of that fear was like, I all of a sudden realized there's this evil. I all of a sudden believe hell exists, and I know in about 10 minutes I'm going. And I deserve it. Like, there was no argument from me of whether or not I should go. I knew I was going, and I knew I was dying, and it was just terrifying. I mean, what is more terrifying than that? And so I tried to sit up, and I didn't feel any pain, and I said, oh, maybe I'm already dead. Right? I mean, there's no way I'm not in pain right now. That's physically impossible. So I sat all the way up, and I even got to my feet, and I go, and I don't feel the pain. And I start trembling again, because now I'm just completely confused and scared, because I'm thinking, like, maybe I'm already dead, and the devil's outside the door ready to take me. Like, I don't know. And so I started crying all over again, and I was just freaking out. But all of a sudden I could tell that the sun had just coming up, and I could see there was light behind the blinds. And I was just kind of drawn to it. And I remember reaching over to grab the blinds to pull them back. And I remember the sun just hitting my fingers. And it just sent this electricity through my body, as if I'd never felt the sun before. And man, I ripped those covers back, and I saw the sun just right there on the horizon. I saw the trees. I could see the wind blowing. And I literally knew in that moment that God had healed me, had made me whole, and had taken all my sins, put them in that loincloth and on that crown, and had taken them to the cross. In that moment, I knew it. I'm all lit up right now. I knew that I was going to live forever, and that I was going to heaven, and there was no good reason why. I didn't deserve it. I didn't ask for it, and I cried. I mean, you want to talk about grace? The amount of grace that I felt in that moment, I mean, it changed my life. It changed my life. That was the last day that I ever messed with any of that. And it literally, I mean, I called my dad right away. I said, Dad, Jesus is real. And he loves me and he loves you. I called my mom and said, Mom, all those books in the Bible, they might have some truth in them. I mean, I lost it. I absolutely lost it, and you can ask my dad later, that was the turning point in my life. And I'll never be the same, obviously. And the withdrawals, the addiction was gone. It was literally gone. I grabbed the fishing rod and my boxers and ran to a pond that I knew was there physically. Like I was physically back as if I'd never done a drug in my life. And, all glory to God. I remember, I wish I could talk for another half hour because I keep you guys here all day. And I'm here to encourage you that, Bill asked me to make a title for my testimony, and I just titled it None Too Far, because there is nobody who through prayer that God can't in an instant change. that he can't make new, completely new. Like, you would not believe the people that knew me then, when they saw me 2 weeks later, didn't even recognize me. And so I just want to encourage you all in that. And I know that in the Bible I still wasn't sure about. And I remember opening the Bible and saying, God, if you're real, show me something. And I opened it up and I just pointed my finger to a page, the Old Test. And I landed on Genesis chapter 7, verse 11, that says, on the 17th day of the second month, God brought the rain. It was the day of the flood, when all the evil was wiped away and only the good remained. And then I knew from that moment on that every single word was true. From beginning to end, every single word was true. And so I don't have any more time, but I just want you guys to be encouraged in that, we see homeless people, we see people who have struggling family members. We probably all know somebody who we wish, I've told them about Jesus, I've done this and done that. I know my family is praying for me, and I know that I had families all over the place praying for me. And I'm encouraging you guys to keep praying, because those people who you think will never come around, God can use them in an instant and change their life in a moment. And that we're all equally deserving and undeserving of his grace at the same time. We're all on the same page. We're sinners and then we're forgiven. God doesn't see it. It's black and it's white. There is no middle ground. There's nobody who deserves saving more or less, and there's nobody who's too far or too close. So this person only needs a little saving. Well, this person needs a lot. No, we're all sinners, and we need his blood on us to make us clean. So anyways, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening, and I hope this encouraged you to pray for some people in your life who you think may not come around.
Thank you.